Why in May, we jointly launched the first Strategic Security Dialogue, a new channel for civilian and military leaders to discuss sensitive topics, including cyber and maritime security. That's why it's also important that our military leaders work together, get to know one another, not just our political leaders, but our military leaders, as Admiral Mullen and General Chen have begun to do in their recent exchange of meetings. Our generals should be talking to each other alongside with our diplomats as frequently as our diplomats do.
The biggest threat to America is not Al-Qaeda, it's not ISIS, it's not Putin, it's not any of these guys, it's China.
China has non-convertible currency, strict capital controls. Since 2015, you can't get money out of the country, only in special circumstances. But if you're showing profits, you're probably getting compensated based on the money you're making in China. But yet, the shareholders can never see that money because you have strict capital controls in a non-convertible currency. What you can criticize is the policies of the government that allowed for the behavior to occur in the first place. We build a system that incentivizes behavior for the destruction of the country. That's not the fault of the business community, that's the fault of the government. Now, you have the President of the United States saying, here's a non-market economy that we basically let into the WTO in 2001, and they broke every rule in the book and continue to, and they're not gonna stop. We're gonna treat them just like we did. Prior to going to the WTO, they had to have a vote on most favored nation status every single year, right? Once that stopped, then corporate money started pouring in. Foreign direct investment started pouring into China, and they grew like crazy. They took 70,000 factories and 3.4 million manufacturing jobs. And so the President of the United States says, okay, they're clearly don't have any intention on following the rules. We're gonna put tariffs on, because that's what we had before.
President Trump has been on the right path with dealing with China. There's a few more things that he can do, but he is up against draining the swamp of all these politicians that have been in there way too long. My mother's always said, a politician is like a diaper and should be changed regularly.
Nancy Pelosi has led the House Democrats for 16 years, including a stint as Speaker between 2007 and 2010. Her wealth places her neatly in the top 1%. She is one of the richest members of Congress, with an estimated net worth of over $100 million. You can see why from this little story. On March the 18th, 2008, while she was Speaker, Nancy Pelosi bought $220,000 of Visa IPO, or initial public offering, stock. She got it a day before it was publicly traded, a privilege reserved for a select group of hand-picked investors. Here's where it gets really swampy. 2 weeks before she was given special access to the IPO stock, a piece of legislation called the Credit Card Fair Fee Act of 2008 was introduced in the House. It would have cut Visa's revenues and hurt Visa's stock price, something that then Speaker Pelosi now had a direct interest in. By a remarkable coincidence, this piece of antitrust legislation, normally such a priority for Democrats, never made it to a vote on the House floor. When this shady transaction was previously reported, Pelosi's office published a classic non-denial denial, including the following laughable claim. Leader Pelosi has been in the lead advocating for Congress to act in the public interest and not the special interest. Laughable because for 16 years, Leader Pelosi, aka Queen of the Swamp, has presided over one of the most blatant ways in which special interests get what they want in Washington, the institutional corruption of the congressional dues system. As House Leader, Nancy Pelosi is heavily involved in the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, or DCCC. Democratic members of Congress effectively buy their seats on congressional committees by raising money for the DCCC. Helpfully, there's a menu with prices. According to a leaked DCCC document, in the 2014 election cycle, for a regular committee member, it's $125,000. For a ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, it's $250,000. And for the ranking member of the powerful Financial Services Committee, it's $500,000. Of course it is, because that committee regulates the richest businesses, Wall Street. At the time the document was leaked, the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee was, wait for it, Maxine Waters. That election cycle, she raised over $150,000 from donors in just 2 industries, securities and investment and commercial banks. They were 2 of her top 5 donation sources. For this year's midterms, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have chosen "For the People" as their slogan, and their platform pledges a crackdown on corruption in Washington. The irony is richer than Nancy Pelosi herself.
There is so much ample proof that the Bidens have been using this to their advantage, with Hunter Biden getting this a $1 billion deal with China in a hedge fund.
You can go read the sources, the New York Times report, Wall Street Journal reports. Biden, his son, went with him on Air Force Two over to China. 10 days later is named a board member of Bohai Harvest hedge fund, which is a $1.5 billion hedge fund.
Now Hunter Biden says, well, if Daddy gets into office, I'll give up that. Well, how did you get this? You got Ukraine, you got that, and everybody's screaming Russia, Russia, Russia. I mean, come on. Like, this is obviously a bait and switch move by the Democrats. And I'm not saying both parties are great, because, again, we should be draining the swamp. When Biden was vice president with Obama as president, they let in so much infrastructure for America's companies to go into China, and for China to move its Confucius Institutes into American universities. And this is actually trickled down into grade school, where their propaganda machines are at work, and they are sending the message of communism to America. Why do you think we have so many millennials thinking that socialism and communism is a good thing? This has to stop. We have to put an end to the militarization of communism in Western civilization.
The Thousand Talents program is a way for China to recruit scholars and researchers into sharing their findings with China. The Chinese Communist Party operates about 200 different talent recruitment programs. The Thousand Talents is the best known of those, and it has about 7,000 members worldwide. So that's 7,000 researchers and scholars who are getting incentives from China to kind of spill the beans on what they're working on and give early access to their findings. And usually the way this works is that China will approach a scholar, offer them research funding, sometimes a prestigious position at a Chinese university. For some, they'll offer the use of a lab in China, and the scholar will get a lot of perks and financial benefits, but in exchange, they have to share their findings with China. So just to give you a couple of examples, Charles Lieber is one of the names that probably a lot of people have heard. He is the top nanoscience expert in the world. Thomson Reuters named him the top chemist in the world at one point. He's was the chair of the chemistry department at Harvard University. He was a member of the Thousand Talents plan. He was receiving monthly $50,000 payments from China, a living stipend of $158,000 per year, and $1.5 million to set up a lab in China. In exchange, he was supposed to share his research findings and train 3 to 4 graduate students of China's choice per year. You can see how that has major national security implications. A couple other examples. Case Western Reserve University, a professor there has been charged with $3.6 million in wire fraud. He had gotten a grant from the federal government to do some research, and then simultaneously gotten another grant from the National Natural Science Foundation in China to do the exact same research. So he's double dipping and sending the findings to both sources. Similar thing at the University of Florida, where a professor actually rose to become the vice president of a university in China. He had this secret dual career going on. And there's one kind of funny anecdote, I mean, not really funny, but humorous, at West Virginia University, where a tenured physics professor signed up for the Thousand Talents plan, went to his university and requested parental leave, saying he needed to become the primary caretaker for his child. But really, he was going off to China because his contract obliged him to spend 3 years working in China. So his way around this was asking for parental leave. But this is affecting hundreds of scholars, not just in the United States, but around the world. It's a very big problem that we're only just starting to grasp. In China, when a corporation wants to have access to a Chinese market and do business there, they're forced to hand over technology. They're forced to give over trade secrets and inventions and things that they've put together as the price of doing business in China. this is just one example of the way that China is really seeking to exploit American systems for their own advantage.
So this is fascinating. It just struck me, with the Confucius Institutes, we have these, open partnerships, so to speak, and somewhat clear flows of money that may be changing. Then we have these various funding regimes, and then with this 1,000 Talents program, we have something where everything is completely undisclosed. And frankly, I don't. Are you allowed to be a part of this program if you're a, U.S. university researcher? I mean, how does this work?
Well, currently, membership in the 1,000 Talents plan is not illegal. That conceivably could change, but right now it's not illegal. What is illegal is to not disclose it, or to double dip for the same research, or to take research that the federal government funded and then share the results with an unauthorized party, namely the Chinese government. So that's what these scholars are being charged with. They're being charged with fraud of the United States government and a failure to disclose their ties.
The recent moves with Trump and dealing with TikTok is absolutely perfect, because again, we're looking at how the propaganda is spreading and how the machine of social media can spread the wrong message and upset elections rather quickly, because they're now dealing with the very young in the TikTok. But this spreads to Reddit, where they put in $300 million into Reddit. So this social media digital currency that's happening with China and the propaganda machine.
You've seen the legal system and legal punishments be used very much as an enforcement arm of this cultural crackdown, where hundreds of thousands have been arrested each year on trumped-up charges with very little right to a fair trial.
It was shot in either April or August last year. On the backs of the men, the words Kashgar City Detention Centre is printed, a reference to a prison facility in Xinjiang.
The Chinese government has recently developed a phone application designed to surveil ethnic minority Muslims. The technology relies on facial recognition software created by a Chinese company called Face++, which is a division of a major startup called Megvii. And one of Megvii's most prominent investors is none other than Hunter Biden, even as Joe runs for president. The Biden family is profiting from helping the authoritarian Chinese regime oppress its religious minorities. #JoeChina. Spread the word.
The multiple levels from China that are a negative and a very real threat to our country. How is it that these billions of dollars of influence for decades has been ignored? We have them on the Arctic Circle Council as observers, but they've stated their interest in hydrocarbons, the shipping lanes, and also nuclear-powered submarines and icebreakers. We have them stealing intellectual property from us at the tune of $600 billion a year. We have also prosecuted the largest group of former intelligence agents, U.S., for conveying trade secrets, national defense trade secrets, to China in the last year. So in all facets, they are a very real threat, and those decades of influence is somehow being ignored.
To preserve our republic, it would be to secure the internet. I started working on talking to engineers about what is 5G, because we'd said in the national security strategy that data is a strategic resource, like oil in the 20th century, data in the 21st century, which will drive artificial intelligence and everything that all the algorithms that essentially guide our lives to better places. If we didn't secure that strategic resource, then we were at risk as a democracy. In the digitized world, the ability to aggregate data is equivalent to aggregating power. And today, the two entities that can really aggregate data are large tech companies and totalitarian regimes. Democracies have a hard time aggregating data. The United States cannot aggregate data because the law prevents it from doing so. I thought America is the greatest nation on earth, and we're unassailable, we're the most powerful, nothing could happen to us. And that was the point when I realized that no, we could have carrier battle groups, nuclear subs, F-35s, and all of this capability and spend $800 billion a year on defense. But if our society was basically being attacked at their job level, at their societal level, then we had lost the ability to protect our nation in a globalized, internet-powered world.
You know, Trump is on the right steps here, people. We really need to make sure that we have a president that's looking after the Western culture and on what we stand on and what we believe. Otherwise, it's going to be big trouble.